Here's a thread connecting three very different stories today. The big number in the headline versus the more complicated reality underneath it. A number that tells you Europe is having one of its worst ever fire years. True, but hiding something important. 000 robot taxis are about to flood Las Vegas. Real, but not what it sounds like. And a number that says a gut microbe makes you 29% stronger. Exciting, but not yet what you'd hope. In each case, the headline figure is a doorway, not the whole house. We start in the smoke over southern Europe. Europe is in the grip of another brutal wildfire summer, and the top-line numbers are genuinely alarming. According to the European Forest Fire Information System, EFFIS, the EU's official satellite monitoring service, well over 500,000 hectares have already burned. 000 hectares have burned across the European Union so far in 2026. To put that in perspective, that's an area substantially larger than the entire country of Luxembourg, and it's running at roughly 2 to 3 times the 20-year average for this point in the year. This is tracking as one of the worst wildfire years on record, close behind 2025, which was itself a record breaker. Some specific national numbers are staggering. France has passed its all-time national record for area burned, running more than 3 times its long-term average. Spain has had one of its worst years since its data series began, and the human toll has been real. Lives lost, including firefighters, and hundreds of thousands of people evacuated from their homes in Spain and France at the peak. So the headline, "Europe is having a near-record fire year," is true. But here's where I want to push past it, because there are 2 crucial things the big scary number hides. And understanding them makes you genuinely smarter about this, rather than just alarmed. The first thing it hides is a stark regional split. And this is the part almost no headline tells you. Europe is on fire makes it sound uniform, like the whole continent is burning equally. It isn't. When you look at the data country by country, and the science writer Hannah Ritchie laid this out really clearly, you see that Western Europe is having a genuinely terrible year. France, Spain, Portugal, and Germany are all well above their averages. But at the very same time, much of the Balkans and the Eastern Mediterranean is having a quiet, even below average year. Greece is tracking near its lowest levels since 2012. Croatia and Romania are also below their norms. So it's not Europe is burning. It's the west of Europe is burning while the southeast is relatively calm. And that regional pattern matters because it points to the specific driver, a particular configuration of heat and drought parked over Western Europe this summer, not a uniform continental apocalypse. And here's a second subtlety even within that. A lot of the fire activity in the Balkans in a normal year is agricultural land burning, deliberate or routine field burning, which is a genuinely different phenomenon from the forest megafires ripping through Spain and France. Lump them all into one number, and you lose the entire story of what's actually happening and why. The second thing the number hides is the honest, careful version of the climate connection, and I want to handle this precisely, because it's exactly the kind of thing that gets flattened in both directions. On one side, people wave away any single fire season as just weather. On the other, every fire gets instantly branded as simple proof of climate change. The accurate version is more disciplined than either. A formal scientific analysis by World Weather Attribution, a group that specializes in exactly this question, found that climate change made the extreme heat and drought conditions driving these specific French and Spanish fires significantly more likely. Spain's meteorological agency says this is shaping up to be the hottest summer on record for the country. So the honest statement isn't climate change caused this fire. No single event has one cause, and it isn't this is just a bad summer, nothing to see. It's this. A hotter, drier baseline loads the dice, so that when the normal ingredients for fire show up, they burn hotter, spread faster, and break records more often. The climate change signal is in the loading of the dice, not in any single roll. That's the scientifically defensible statement, and it's more useful than either slogan. Take the near-record number seriously. It reflects real devastation and a real worsening trend in Western Europe. But be the person who knows what's underneath it, that Europe isn't burning uniformly, that the West versus Southeast split tells you something real about the actual weather drivers, and that the climate connection is about probabilities and baselines, not simple one-to-one blame. The scary headline number is the start of understanding this, not the end. The question I'll leave you with: how often do we accept a single dramatic number about a whole continent or a whole country, when the real story is hiding in how unevenly it's actually distributed? And that gap between an impressive headline number and the messier reality underneath takes us from smoke in Europe to a very different kind of number, lighting up in the Nevada desert. The Nevada Transportation Authority unanimously approved permits for 3 companies, Tesla, Waymo, and Uber, to operate paid, driverless robotaxis in Clark County, which includes Las Vegas. And the number that made all the headlines was big and dramatic: up to 8,000 robotaxis. Tesla alone was cleared for as many as 5,000, with Waymo and Uber approved for around 1,000 each. Las Vegas approves 8,000 robotaxis. It sounds like the sci-fi future arriving overnight, a desert city suddenly swarming with driverless cars. Except, and this is the reality the number hides, that 8,000 figure is a ceiling, not a plan, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can take Tesla's. At the very hearing where this was approved, Tesla's own Cybercab chief engineer, Eric Early, said, and I'm quoting him closely, that 5,000 has always been a ceiling for us. He said he didn't think the company would be in a position to deploy anywhere near 5,000 vehicles within the year, and that they'd be extremely happy and satisfied to reach maybe 2,500. And crucially, he added that the limiting factor is not the technology. So, the company that got the headline number is itself openly saying the real deployment will be a fraction of it. For context on how fast these numbers move, just weeks earlier, Tesla's interim permit in Vegas had capped it at 10 vehicles, literally 10, confined to the strip, speed limited to 45 miles per hour, and banned from the airport. So we've gone from a real number of 10 to a theoretical ceiling of thousands, and the truth of the next year lives somewhere in between. Now, why does this matter beyond nitpicking a number? Because the gap between permitted and actually deployed is where all the genuinely important questions live, and there are 2 big ones. The first is safety, and this is the real substance. The critical challenge for robotaxis has never been driving on an empty, sunny road. They're good at that. It's what engineers call edge cases, the unpredictable, chaotic situations. And Las Vegas is almost a perfect stress test for exactly this. Think about it. Intoxicated tourists stepping off curbs at 2 a.m., massive simultaneous surges in demand when a concert or a convention lets out, constant construction, emergency vehicles, and general chaos. A robotaxi system that looks flawless on a quiet Tuesday can be overwhelmed when 10,000 people all want to ride at once after a show. And this isn't hypothetical. There's already been a reported incident of a robotaxi from one company entering an active fire scene in Las Vegas, prompting a fleet recall. So the real test isn't the permit number. It's whether these vehicles can handle the genuinely hard, messy, human situations at scale, in one of the most chaotic driving environments in America. The second question underneath the number is jobs, and it's a genuine, unsettled debate that deserves both sides. On one hand, local taxi and limousine operators, represented by groups like the Livery Operators Association, formally opposed these permits, arguing the rollout is too much, too fast, that thousands of driverless cars will wipe out the livelihoods of human taxi, limo, and gig drivers, absorbing rides that used to feed thousands of families. On the other hand, proponents argue this creates a new category of jobs, the people needed to maintain, clean, charge, and remotely support these fleets. Which of those is bigger? Honestly, nobody knows yet, and anyone claiming certainty is guessing. But notice the shape of the worry. The pessimistic case is that a few thousand vehicles, owned by a few large companies, absorb income that used to be spread across thousands of independent drivers, concentrating the money in fewer hands. That's the real thing to watch, and it won't show up in the permit number. It'll show up over the next year, in the actual streets. So my take, don't be dazzled or panicked by 8,000 robotaxis. The real story is a phased, uncertain, closely watched experiment, where the company itself expects to deploy a fraction of the headline figure, and where the questions that actually matter, is it safe at scale in a chaotic city? Those are still unanswered. And who wins and loses economically are precisely the ones a splashy permit number can't answer. Las Vegas is about to become the most important real-world laboratory for this technology in the country. Watch the deployment, the safety record, and the driver livelihoods over the next 12 months, not the ceiling number in the headline. And that brings me to the last story, and my favorite example today of a thrilling number that needs a second, harder look. Because this one is about a headline that could sell you a supplement you shouldn't buy yet. Scientists published research in the medical journal Gut, identifying a specific species of gut bacteria. It's called Roseburia immunivorans, that is linked to greater muscle strength. And the headline number is genuinely eye-catching. Older adults who had detectable levels of this microbe in their gut had 29% higher hand grip strength than those who didn't. 29% stronger. In a world worried about aging, frailty, and muscle loss, that number is electric. It practically writes the wellness headline itself. The gut bug that makes you stronger. And the underlying science is genuinely interesting and real. So let me give it its due. Researchers from Leiden in the Netherlands and the universities of Granada and Almeria in Spain did two things. First, in humans, they found that consistent association between this specific bacterium and strength, not just hand grip, but leg press and bench press too. And they noticed the bacterium becomes less abundant as we age, which is intriguing given that strength also declines with age. Second, and this is the more impressive part, they went beyond correlation and did an experiment in mice. They gave the bacterium to mice, and those mice got roughly 30% stronger in grip strength, developed larger muscle fibers, and shifted toward fast-twitch muscle fibers, the kind used for powerful movements. That mouse experiment is what makes this more than just a coincidence-spotting study. It suggests the bacterium might actually cause the strength, at least in mice. But, and here is where you have to look under the headline, because the caveats are not fine print. They're the whole story. Let me walk through what that 29% does and doesn't mean. First, the human part of the study is small, and it's observational. We're talking about roughly 123 people total, and only about 33 of them were older adults. That's the group the famous 29% comes from. That's a small number to hang a dramatic statistic on, and it's observational, which means it shows a correlation, not proof of cause. Here's the trap, and it's the same one I warn about constantly. The people who happen to have this bacterium might be stronger, for reasons that also happen to give them the bacterium. People who exercise more and eat more fiber tend to have healthier, more diverse gut microbiomes and stronger muscles. So the bug might be a marker of an active, fiber-rich lifestyle rather than the cause of the strength. The researchers themselves note that strength training has been shown to increase this very bacterium, which means the arrow could point the other way. Maybe strong muscles cultivate the bug, rather than the bug building the muscle. Second, the strong causal evidence, the part that actually shows the bacterium building muscle, is in mice, not humans. And mice are not tiny people. Countless things that work beautifully in mice fail completely in humans, even in this study. The human strains of the bacterium didn't permanently take up residence in the mice's guts. So we have a promising cause and effect story in rodents, and a suggestive correlation in a small group of humans, and a big unproven gap in between. And that's why the single most important, practical takeaway is the one the exciting headline buries. Do not go out and buy a Roseburia supplement. There is no proven human product. The causal effect in humans is unestablished, and the researchers themselves are explicit that rigorous human trials are the necessary next step. The honest status of this is genuinely promising early science and a real candidate for a future therapy against age-related muscle loss. Not a supplement that makes you 29% stronger. Those are very different claims, and the gap between them is exactly where people waste money and hope on wellness products that outran their evidence. So my take on this one is affectionate but firm, and it's the same discipline as the fires and the robotaxis. Enjoy the genuine wonder of it. The idea that a microbe in your gut talks to your muscles is a real and fascinating frontier, part of a growing understanding of a gut-muscle axis that could genuinely matter for healthy aging. But hold the number correctly. 29% stronger is a compelling doorway into an interesting scientific question, not a proven promise you can act on. The useful, non-magical version of the advice is the boring version scientists actually support. Eat plenty of fiber, beans, oats, vegetables, which feeds beneficial gut bacteria generally. And do resistance exercise, which we know builds strength and, apparently, cultivates these very microbes. That's the real earned takeaway. The supplement bottle with 29% on the label, if it ever appears, is the headline getting ahead of the science. So let me tie all three together. Because they're one habit of mind. A wildfire number that says Europe is burning and hides a sharp regional split and a careful climate reality. A robotaxi number that says 8,000 cars and hides a phased rollout the company itself says will be a fraction of that. And a health number that says 29% stronger and hides a small study, a mouse experiment, and an unproven leap to humans. In every case, the number isn't false. The fires are real, the permits are real, the correlation is real. But the number is a headline, and a headline is a compression. It squeezes a complicated, uneven, caveated reality into one dramatic figure. And in the squeezing, the most important parts, the where, the how sure, get squeezed out. So here's what I'll leave you with. We live in a world that runs on big numbers in headlines, because a number feels like a fact, solid and settled and done. But almost every important number is really a compressed story, and the compression is where the truth gets lost. So build the habit of gently decompressing it. When you see the big figure, ask the three questions that unpack it. Is it evenly distributed, or is an average hiding a split? Is it what's actually happening, or just what's permitted or possible? And how sure are we? Is this proven or promising? Those three questions, where really and how sure, will make you sharper than most of what you'll read. The number gets your attention. The reality underneath is where you actually get wise. Take care of each other, and I'll see you next time.